If we don't take time to reflect and distill out our lessons learned, then we lose a lot of value in our work. We're building our skills, we get experience, we deliver results. Continuation of that feedback loop is, what did I learn? What did I learn, to do? What did I learn not to do? And too many people miss that opportunity. So that's where I wanted to take the opportunity today, share with you what I've learned so that you could also figure out what's going to work for you in your career. Welcome to Tech Careers and Money Talk. I'm your host, Christopher Nelson, and welcome to episode 53. Episode 53, because we've been releasing every week for the last year, means that we're getting to episode 1, year 2. With that in mind, I wanted to reflect back on 1 year of podcasting. What are 10 of the most valuable lessons that I learned and that you can use as an example for how to build skills into expertise. Now, I'm not trying to claim that I'm a podcasting expert. I am not by any means. However, I do have 1 year under my belt. I have a lot of different lessons learned, and there's takeaways in all of those for you as well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through the 10 lessons that I learned, give you some details, some lessons that you can take from this as well as you are building and growing your career in tech. And then I'm going to give you a sneak preview into what's going to be happening in year 2 as we continue this mission of having conversations around career and money in public so that you can learn how to talk about it. You can build skills to expertise. You can understand how to manage equity. You can be building your own evergreen portfolio and ultimately planning your exit plan from full-time W-2 into a lifestyle that you design. Okay, let's get into it. The first thing I think it's important to call out is that distilling lessons learned, this practice is so important as you are executing in your career, taking time to reflect and see what you've accomplished and distill out those lessons learned. Many of us are in this go-go execution mode and don't take this time, but it's truly the value of distilling out these lessons learned allow us to either celebrate what we've learned and make sure that we're validating and calling out that that is now something that I have learned and I understand and I'm aware of moving forward, or it's the ability for us to do something different to intentionally get a different result. So I would encourage all of you to go through and jot down your lessons learned as you're going through year over year in your career. So number 1, what I learned is that there is so much to be learned from observation followed by conversation. You can learn a lot from observation followed by conversation. So it was really important for me to bring quality to you that I looked over the LinkedIn profile of my guests if I didn't know them already and looked at other assets that they had built, whether that was books that they had written or work that they had produced on the web that was visible or speeches, conversations they'd had, is I observed and I studied my guests. And then I went in and I had conversations with them. And what you're able to do is you're able to concentrate and focus that conversation on what are the lessons and what can you really learn from those specific individuals. And this was very, very important for me because I learned so much from all of the guests that I interviewed this last year because of the fact that I observed them and I studied them, not stalk. Okay, where it was not stalking anybody, but I was observing them and then I had conversations with them. So for you, the big takeaway is this is a great strategy that I also used when I was going for interviews. And I was going to interview my hiring manager. I was going to interview other executives. Is I would go and I would study them. Because when you study somebody and you understand some of the smaller nuances about them, like they enjoy horseback riding, or they enjoy cross-country skiing, or they've written a book, or any type of experience, they went to the same university that you did, there's opportunity to create connection. And the connection starts then building trust. And then when you're in conversation, the conversation gets that much richer. So that's why I really encourage everybody to think about, making observations, learning about the potential managers and people you're going to hire and going in, because this was instrumental to getting a distilled value, getting focused value out of my guests for the podcast interviews. So that's number one, learning from observation and conversation. I had a lot of lessons learned from there. The second one, and we may all know this, but what I've come to understand is this is a skill, is that the quality of the questions that you ask allow you to learn more faster. As I started this journey, I was so excited to talk to people and understand what they knew, what they could share with you. I would try to put together questions the best I could. And the other thing that I tried to do was to pay attention in the moment, not be afraid to interrupt and say, excuse me, let me actually dig deeper. Let me double click on that. Another strategy that I used with the questions was trying to understand, when somebody was sharing with me a story or a lesson learned, what was the difference between their expectation and reality? Because there's so much value in that. And just like my lesson that I learned with podcasting, for you in your career, thinking about asking better questions, whether that's in your one-on-ones, trying to understand what's really important for your manager, whether that's in customer or client meetings, or whether it's for interviews, focus on asking better questions. And I'm sure that you're going to start getting some great answers back that then you're going to want to double click and ask more on. But that's been a great lesson learned, and I'm excited to continue to build that skill as I go forward. The third one is just reinforce something that I already knew. This is a lesson learned from building skills and moving it to expertise. And this is consistency and repetition are key. You got to get in the reps. You have to show up and you have to do the work. I'm 52 episodes in. I've done 52 episodes that you've seen. There may be a couple that I did and I scrapped altogether, and maybe we'll talk about that later. But 80%, if we're going to Pareto this thing, 80-20, 80% of moving from skill to expertise is really getting in the repetitions and being consistent. It's so, so important. And it's arguably sometimes the hardest thing to do. And so what I learned here, like the subtlety that I thought about is, and that I executed on, was being able to batch process. So some weeks I would do 2 or 3 interviews, get those to the production team, get those produced so that I was consistent in my output, but I could throttle my input, meaning that I could take a week off. So it is important. And I think there's a big, as I'm moving more into this content creation and education business, I realize that being consistent in the output, I can modulate the input into the system that's going to produce that, so that I can then get a break and make sure that the consistency doesn't mean that I'm having to interview every week, but I'm delivering things every week, but I have the ability to have some weeks that are busier than others and other weeks where I can just really relax. And that's important when we think about our careers also, because we know that the level that we work, we can't maintain that all the time. We can't maintain that output. So being able to understand, how do we throttle that? How do we figure out how to get rest while we are being consistent and getting in the reps, I think is really important. I think the other key thing is keep showing up. Like, to be consistent, there were times and weeks where I was challenged, I was feeling tired, but ultimately I wanted to keep showing up. I wanted to keep producing the content. And a lot of that was due to the feedback and support I get from people just like you. So number 4, don't be afraid to watch the tape, get feedback, and reflect. As I first started to produce this podcast, I have to admit that I was really intimidated by listening to myself. And when I did, I was very focused on the errors. I wasn't focused on what was going right. I think this can be a byproduct of how working in tech, we're so focused on removing error and iterating through that we're trying to find errors, and we don't always focus on what's good. I had to get comfortable with that. I had to get comfortable with watching the tape. And then from the tape, I would have questions. Well, am I being confusing here? Or does that, how does that sound to people? And going out and seeking feedback to people that were listening, to people that were watching, so important. And then being able to reflect on that and put that back in. It's such an important part of the process of podcasting, is to get the feedback, to watch your show, to understand. And so now it's something that I'll actually do with my sons as I drive them to school or pick them up. We won't be watching it, but we'll be listening to it so that I can just, hear the flow. I can then, some of the things I talked about before, asking better questions. Am I, prepared enough? Am I really providing that key information? And I think that's important for all of us in our careers, to make sure that we're taking the time after projects to watch the tape and getting clear on what went well. That's something that we don't take the time to do, but I'm very focused on that now, is what's going well. What am I doing well? And then also looking at what are the things that I want to improve. And being in this for the long haul, I realize I just got to get 1% better every week. Just keep inching it up. This is the concept that comes from the book, The Slight Edge, where if you just consistently get 1% better over time, whether that's a week or a month, over time it compounds. And so this is my encouragement to you, is as you're thinking about, it's getting to the end of a quarter, reflect back on what you did, watch the tape, sit down with peers that you went through projects with, ask them what they witnessed, what they saw, gather that feedback, because all of that input is going to make you better. It may feel a little bit awkward at first, but if you're able to get over that hurdle, that's going to ultimately make you better. Then you want to consolidate that into a list of lessons learned. One of the things that I found when I went on a sabbatical in 2019, and I had been going hard in tech since 2002. I'd taken some vacations, but I had not stopped work, intentionally saying I'm not working for a company that I didn't have to think about. And I had a lot of tapes rolling around in the head, a lot of things I was telling myself about some failures. And I went through an exercise. And if you're interested in this, just reach out, ask@techcareersandmoney.com. I have the spreadsheet. It's something that I use when I'm coaching people. And I just walked through it, and it sort of takes things that happened that you may call failures, you may call challenges with people, and turns them into valuable lessons learned. And that way, when I'm remembering this, instead of remembering this negative thing that keeps impacting me, I go immediately, oh, that's the lesson learned. And that comes from watching the tape. We have to convert these things that happened to lessons learned so that we know where and how to build from there. So that's lesson number 4. Don't be afraid to watch the tape, get feedback, and create and reflect and get those lessons learned. Number 5 is low and slow is more powerful than quick bursts. Meaning that this consistent effort over time is going to pay off more than just, a couple quick sprints. And there's so much that I learned in the first year of podcasting. I learned it from the guests. I learned it from you asking questions. I learned it, just having rich conversations outside of the podcast with people that were fans or people that know me. And I learned a lot about the process. And essentially, I think that it was just staying in the process and realizing this is going to take time. I'm only at year 1. I realized that there's a long way to go. And sometimes we want to, accelerate and get to, this level very quickly where, I'm in this established podcaster. I'm doing something like, Bigger Pockets or, some of these larger podcasts that they have followings. But I'm learning this. I'm learning the skill. I'm learning the trade. And I'm just growing low and slow. Low and slow is the way they cook the brisket here in Texas for the barbecue. It's absolutely delicious. And that's about being patient and letting the lessons come to you and not rushing to it. And this is something that it took me a while to learn in my career because I was very focused and driven and wanted to get to the next promotion. I didn't always think about, well, what are some of the things that I need to learn that are going to take time, that I just need to be in the process and it's going to be low and slow. And because what I realized is that low and slow, the same way that it makes this delicious food here in Texas, it's also a way that we reinforce and we understand these concepts very deeply. I think right now I could probably teach an entry-level course on podcasting with all of the things that I've learned from this year, but part of that was being patient, keeping my head down, managing, some of the issues as they came up. And so my recommendation to you is just be patient, like be in this process of learning. I think whether that is hard skills in your specific discipline, whether that's engineering or product management or sales or marketing, just being patient as you're learning your craft, getting in the repetitions and just knowing that experience, the results, the confidence that comes with that is just going to come. Just letting it happen low and slow. So that's number 5, low and slow growth, more powerful than some quick bursts. Number 6 is anticipating challenges and headwinds. I knew that this journey was going to be challenging. It was something brand new. I have throughout my career started many things for the first time, and it took different leaps. And this whole concept of content creation, I'd done some short form things before that, to mixed results. And I knew going in podcasting that I was going to have challenges, mental challenges, execution challenges, all sorts of things. And so I was ready for those. I knew it was going to happen. And so I managed the risk accordingly. For example, I made sure that I would have, a few backlog of episodes so that if something went wrong with one, then I knew I had one to fall back on. So case in point is, I went to go do a live interview here in Austin. I went to a studio and they'd set the studio up so that it was all automatic. It was run remotely. And we went in there and recorded our podcast episode. And then when I got the footage was of just a very low quality. It wasn't satisfactory, and I didn't want to go live with the product. So I had to cancel that. But that's an example of where there was this headwind, this challenge, but I had some other episodes already recorded. I could just move on with the next one and then go re-record this one. And so this is, I think, so important for us in technology to understand that we're going to face headwinds. We're going to face challenges. What we're doing is hard. And when you understand that, that can help us when something negative comes our way. We realize, okay, it's not a failure. This is a challenge. This is part of what we're doing here. Mm-hmm. And that mindset has helped me out so much to realize this is a hard thing. If there's challenges, that's normal. And for me, it's always trying to understand, where is the risk going to appear? Where is the next challenge going to appear? So I can manage that. And so that's something that happened to me in podcasting. So number 6 was anticipating challenges and headwinds. So we're going to take a quick break. Number 6, I have 4 more to go, and then we're going to tell you what's going to happen next year. So I'll be right back. All right, and we're back for our Tech Careers and Money Talk, episode number 53, our first episode of year 2. And I'm going through 10 of the biggest lessons learned that I got from 1 year in podcasting. And so right now we are at number 7. Number 7 is embrace vulnerability and growth. Embrace it. Growth is hard. And when we're able to be vulnerable and talk about, how hard it is, and I'm saying vulnerable is, talking about your emotional state, being able to share what you're struggling with, being able to ask for help. I think being able to ask for help is a big one, because, that's admitting that we don't know everything, and we're really trying to get, help and insight from other people to get over this particular hump. But, when we do something new, we're putting ourselves out there. This is going to be scary. It is. And the more that we can talk about that, be open and transparent, and that's good. Transitioning from a full-time professional to being a content creator, I got a lot of feedback. I got some feedback that I don't know if it was you'd consider positive. People asking me, why are you walking away from an established career, sort of right at the height, at the pinnacle? Why are you going to create content and not this? Some people were thinking that maybe I'd made a mistake and in getting me to question myself. The fact that then I was able to turn around and have people that I could talk to about that and process this and gain the confidence, gain the focus in my journey, that wouldn't have happened if I wouldn't have been able to be vulnerable. And this is where I think it's so important for us in tech. We're doing these things that are so hard. We sometimes get feedback or things happen to us that we can think are our fault. We're in some very high stress, challenging situations. I can think of many times, tight project deadlines, end of quarter closing looming, and you're having errors in your technology that are causing other people angst and anxiety. They can sometimes come to you and put things on you emotionally, having conversations that are very emotional and not about the work and what do we need to do and being very analytical. It can be easy to consume that. But being able to be vulnerable and sharing with people, these experiences, the challenges that we're having along the way, that's the stuff that allows us to get it out. And I think being vulnerable is very important for your mental and emotional health. And again, I'm not talking about sitting in, complaining all the time, but I'm talking about being able to process and get things out. I think that having an inner circle that we can be honest with and share our experiences with is very powerful. And so number 7 is vulnerability for growth. Number 8 is then shared experiences, which when you're vulnerable and you're able to talk about what happened or what is happening, then you're able to, what I think is so powerful in the healing is you have shared experiences with people. As I've been sharing on this podcast and other podcasts that I've guested on, that after my first IPO, where we gained significant wealth in a day, I started suffering from sudden wealth syndrome, where I was having a lot of doubts, a lot of fears, a lot of concerns. Sharing that and being vulnerable, people have then come inbound to me through email, through direct messages on LinkedIn, sharing with me that they've had the same experience. They know how I feel. I know how they feel. This creates connection. And this has just been reinforced through this year in podcasting as I've been trying something new. You know, some of these lessons that I'm learning are just reinforcing things that have been in the toolbox for a while, but it's just a different flavor. It's just a, different experience. And so shared experiences, when somebody's had the same experience, different context, but they're having similar emotions and similar feelings. And we can then all share with a shared experience. How did you deal with it? What did you learn? What did you learn about yourself? What did you learn about other people? All of these are so important. And what this taught me is that, getting into a peer group was so important for me at that stage of my career for shared experience. I think that if you can find a peer group, a professional peer group, one that's paid or maybe one that's not, but it's very cohesive, and you can share your experience of what you're going through, that was something that became wind in my sails as I was in the middle of my career and I wanted to ascend from director to senior director to VP and ultimately chief information officer. It was those conversations and that shared experience that then became the wind in my sails. And it's no different here is I am having with podcasting, right? As I'm connecting with other podcasters and I am in a formal networking group, I'm in a community, and we're, sharing our different experiences, what's working, what's not working. We're all learning from each other. And it just makes the experience that much more valuable. So that's shared experience. Number nine is enjoy the process. This is the one that we forget. This is the one that it's so easy to be in the grind, to be moving from one thing to the next and forget. Let me enjoy myself. I try to have a little mental conversation with myself before I get on a podcast where I'm reviewing what this person has done, thinking about the conversation that we're going to have, and just get really excited, smile to myself. And that launches me into just having a great moment with somebody. And this reminds me that, in our career, when we're working, that, we're in this crazy environment, go, 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 but giving, I always found that if you're able to give somebody else, random act of kindness or give them just a compliment, encourage them a little bit, and you see their smile, you're going to get that back, right? And you want to enjoy the journey with who you're with and these moments. We don't always realize, and it sort of goes a little bit back to the beginning, right? If we're not reflecting, if we're not looking back, we don't realize how far we've come on this journey. But making sure that you're present in the moment and that you enjoy it is so, so, so important. Number 10, community and support. This is one of the things I love about this journey is I have met this ragtag. They're really not ragtag. They're incredibly sophisticated and they're doing some phenomenal things, but I call them the ragtag crew, some content creators on LinkedIn. Many of them I've had interviews with, some of them I haven't yet. But man, we're in community and we're trying this new thing. And many of us have come from tech careers or professional backgrounds and are becoming these content creators. And to do it together, to support each other, to be able to, see good things that they have done and respect each other's work and give each other encouragement is so important. And that's one of the things that I absolutely love about this new experience that I'm in of podcasting and content creation is you're meeting a lot of other people who are on the journey, who are ultimately trying to do something different. And, for you, right, you're on this journey of career and money. And there's no straight line. There's not a lot of education. We're, trying to produce more and more, but there's not a lot right now. But that's why you're here. You're in this community. This is a community. It's just starting. It's just at its nascency. We're 1 year in, but this podcast is the beacon of this conversation to let you know having conversations like this are okay. Having deep conversations about career and money is okay. It's good. I want you to feel free. Reach out, DM me on LinkedIn. You can ask at Tech Careers and Money Talk. Ask questions. Many people do, or they'll go to the contact on the podcast page and they'll reach out and they'll leave me a note. And I respond to everybody. We're in this together. This is your community. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. So those are the 10. I'm gonna read through those right now. So 10 lessons from a year in podcasting. So there's so much to learn from observation and conversations. I learned that. So good. Quality questions allow you to learn more. That's number 2. 3, consistency and repetition are key to building expertise. Number 4, don't be afraid to watch the tape, get feedback, and reflect on what you've learned. Number 5, low and slow growth is more powerful than quick bursts of growth. Quick bursts and then stop. Low and slow, baby. Just keep grinding it out. Number 6, anticipate challenges and headwinds. It's okay. You can manage them more effectively that way. Number 7, be vulnerable in growth. Something new. It's going to feel different. You may get negative feedback. Be vulnerable. Talk about that stuff. Because why? Because 8, attract shared experiences. When you're vulnerable, it leads to number 8 that says, I can bring in people and we can have conversations about shared experiences. Makes us so much more powerful. Number 9, enjoy the process. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy the ride. Encourage other people. Be somebody who walks around with a smile on your face and helps people through these challenging days that we all know that we have, tech careers. And then number 10, community and support. You're here. You're part of the Tech Careers and Money tribe. We are collecting ourselves. We're gathering ourselves. Year 1 under the belt, and that was 10. So year 1 was amazing, right? Built a lot of new relationships, a lot of new connections, had some great lessons learned. But what's coming up in year 2? Well, in year 2, we're going to be doing we're doing more of the same, and we're going even deeper. So you may or may not know that with Tech Careers and Money Talk, there is Tech Careers and Money News, which is our newsletter. And so our newsletter goes out weekly on Tuesdays, 4 p.m. Pacific time. And there I put out a poll. I said, what do you want to learn about? Because this is for you. And I want you to understand this is a two-way conversation. I'm here to educate you and give you the things that you want to know about and the things that you also need to learn that nobody's talking about. And from there came back a request to talk about 2 things to go deeper on. One is, how do you trade your time and talent for equity? Right? That is a core framework that the majority of us who aren't founders are here to understand. How do we trade? How do we take a skill, negotiate for equity, and then be able to take that off the table? The second one, that these were equal, they tied, was the evergreen portfolio. And those are the episodes, those are the newsletters that tend to get the most feedback as well, as people want to understand, now that I make the equity, how do I actually turn it into a business that will serve me? So that's where I'm going to be spending the next 20 to 25 episodes. I'm going to be breaking out, and I'm going to be supporting, I'm publishing a book that will I think come out this year. Fingers crossed. We're in process. Things are going well. It's called From No Dough to IPO, a proven playbook for how to trade your time and talent for tech equity. I have in there different plays that we're going to be covering off on. Things like, how do you set goals for tech equity? How do you do due diligence on companies? How do you do due diligence on managers? That's really important too. I'm also going to go deeper on this evergreen portfolio, really going into how should you be structuring this how do you structure it like a business? What does it mean to run it like a business? And getting into deeper detail. That's what people are asking for. So I'm going to do that in the podcast, as well as interview people specifically that will help us understand those things as well, experts in different fields. And then on Tech Careers and Money News, I'm going to be writing articles that will be pointed to in the weekly newsletter, but I'm going to write deeper articles so I can just start articulating more and more this broader framework of from equity to exit, focusing on the equity, focusing on the evergreen portfolio, so that people can truly understand what it's going to take to get out of the W-2 and into your lifestyle by design. Ultimately, this next year is going to be about more conversations and more education. This isn't stopping. This is a train, and we are literally just getting started. So I want to thank you so much for joining. This is us. This is episode 53, where this is the first episode of year 2. I want to thank you for listening. And my ask would be, please share this with somebody. Please share this podcast or share the newsletter where we talk about the podcast. We show everything we're doing there. But we need your support. We need to continue growing, because ultimately we want to bring more and more financially focused technology employees into this conversation so that we can grow our community here. Thank you very much.